recording this just to try to get, like we talked about, my goal is maybe some things that will be of benefit to people who might listen to this call. So I'm going to put it where I'm looking at you guys there. So first thing was, and y'all three have really different stories. Karen, your story with your parents, real quickly, what was the situation when Tender Mercies came into your world?
My mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and my dad had dementia, and I needed help trying to take care of mother. And Tony came on and did that, and did a great job. Very blessed. And when mother passed away, which has been 3 years ago now, he continued with daddy, and we were able to keep daddy at home until the last couple of weeks, and then he went to Mercy House. And daddy's been gone, about 9 months, 10 months.
And we were round the clock with him for 2 years, wasn't it?
Yes. 24/7 for, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so Karen, one of the old high school English teachers who now saw we worked with, and we just got to know each other all over again.
Yes, truly a blessing in our lives. We were able to give both of my parents the best quality of life that under their circumstances, and could not have done it without Tony and his caregivers. They were wonderful.
Jake, you said you have two different areas that we've worked with you in. One were your in-laws, and then one you are what at the bank? What is your title at the bank?
Trust officer.
Okay, so you manage money for people who need help managing their money.
Correct.
Okay, so real quickly, your in-laws, the situation was with your father-in-law and your mother-in-law.
Right. My father-in-law started declining in early 2014, and it was fairly rapid. It got down to the last 2 weeks of his life. He got hospitalized. Then they took him home, and again, Tony brought in essentially 24/7 care. But he didn't last more than a couple of weeks, so it was a quick experience. But it made my mother-in-law happy, and my wife and her sister happy that he got to be home and in the environment they wanted, and got to take care of them the way they wanted to. So again, it short-lived, but a great experience.
And then we didn't see you for a while. It was about a year
right
after that, right?
Well, she started in 2016. If she had bone cancer, that was when the break in the leg occurred, and had to talk her into surgery because she didn't want to do anything, and said that we can get you back home, but we have to get that bone set. So that was the summer of 2016, and we took her home. I guess she went over to Cornerstone for what, Tony, about 6 weeks, I think, to rehab.
Yes.
And then we took her home, and she had a good 6 months. And then in January, the cancer, because no treatment, the cancer basically destroyed the rest of the leg, and she lost mobility. But we were 24/7 from, I guess, August through January 17th or 27th, when she passed away. And again, that was what the girls wanted, and Mary was happy up, and as long as she was able to still know her surroundings. But yeah, it worked out real well in her situation too.
Francis, you have a real unique situation in that you've agreed to be a POA many years before for a friend, and then you ended up having to do what?
Well, it worked out that these two people were good friends of mine, and the woman, Nil, had asked you to help with her husband, Harold. And so you're Tender Mercies people were sort of part-time. They just came in and assisted her with whatever she needed. And then Neil developed a very fast-moving lung cancer and died within 2 months. And it was totally unexpected. And as she said, I planned for every eventuality except me dying first with Harold. Harold had Parkinson's and also the beginnings of dementia. So he lived on after Neil, and the goal was to keep him there in his house. And for a while, y'all were just daytime. And then it became apparent pretty quickly that for him to be able to stay there, you needed to be 24/7. So at that point, in spite of his resistance, that's what happened. And I don't remember dates real well, but I think y'all were full-time for about a year.
A little over, it was a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time. And his dementia worsened and his Parkinson's, but primarily his dementia. So he I don't know how to say it. Harold was difficult. He was probably one of your people who would have been.
All of y'all's people were glad to have people in their homes, weren't they? 24/7.
Yeah.
Wasn't that exciting for them to have these people in their house?
So Harold managed to get up from his chair and fell and broke his hip. And at that point, he went downhill very quickly and probably died a couple of weeks later. So Harold would not have been able to stay there at all.
And he liked having people there, right? He loved it the whole time.
Yes, he had favorites of the people that came, and one in particular was with him for a long time.
But I'm joking a little bit. He was always trying to send people home.
He sent them home. He tricked them to go outside, and then he would lock the door.
Sound familiar, Karen?
Yes, that's what my daddy did.
So they couldn't come back in, and Tony got calls at all times of the day and night and never failed to get up and go over there and fix it. So
we got smart. We put key boxes outside of both of y'all's houses, and we were able to figure out how to get in.
But there is no way that Harold could have stayed there in his home, which is, I don't know that he was cognizant of everything that was going on to make that possible. But there's no way that he could have without y'all's patience and care.
Karen, your dad loved it, right? Having people there?
Oh, yeah. How many times did you have to come over to his house? He ordered them out, locked them out, would go stand outside till they left and watch them drive off.
But we never left. Either one of them, when we got kicked out of the house, nobody ever left, right?
No.
Because you hear stories sometimes where people the caregivers leave and nobody's there. So we had to pretend we left.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then he would reset and they'd come in like, oh, it's a new day. And he was okay then for a while.
Every now and then Harold would forget that he didn't lock the back door. So they would just go around and come in the back door. But occasionally he managed to truly lock them out.
And Jake, your mother-in-law, she took some acclimation time as well.
She did. She pretty much was a loner. She just liked being alone in the house, period. The daughters did not give her a choice. They said, if you're going to be at home, this is the deal. So she tolerated. I can't say that she ever locked anybody out. So she wasn't that proactive about it. But she learned to enjoy people being around, but she liked being alone. She just didn't want anybody around. I did get Tony. Full disclosure, Francis, I didn't know that was you. Francis and I
knew it was you. I didn't know if it was allowed for me to say, "Hey, Jake."
When you look down and say, "Hey, Jake," and then you look up, Jake. Yeah. You look up, Jake, and you look down, and it'll look like the Brady Bunch when they were looking up and down.
Well, when I saw your last name, I thought, oh, I know who Francis is.
Yeah, it's me.
We probably known each other for what, 30 years.
Wow.
Well, I was there at Messer Potts for 22, so
There we go. Okay, so
Yeah.
it goes back that far.
yeah.
Okay.
So, when they were going all down their journeys, especially Karen, your dad, and Harold, Francis, when people are not wanting people there, they're adamantly opposed to having people there, and they were having hallucinations or different things associated with the dementia. How did some of that, I mean, what are some suggestions? Remember, people might be looking at this and they're going, they're seeing there are people there breaking in their house or moving, like, and Harold kept saying people are moving the furniture around, and your dad would, Karen, your dad would say, well, people are breaking in and
Running through the yard, yeah.
and the best was when he got 911 and the sheriff department went over there. They called me, we had to talk them through it. And, so what were some of the things that you did to kind of help with that, either one of you guys?
I mainly relied on you because Harold developed a strong dislike for me, and I was the bad guy. I was the one that was responsible for all the bad things that were happening to him, and so I did not go over there because it just made the situation worse when I was there. And Tony was the reason that we were able to manage. I managed his personal finances, his bill paying. I mean, I was behind the scenes doing those jobs. But Tony was the one, Tony and his people were the ones who were there on a daily basis dealing with Harold. And
it takes unique people to deal with people that don't want them there. And that you got to be thick-skinned. And we had, even with your mother-in-law, Jake, I mean, it takes some, she wasn't as aggressive, is not the right, adamant, let's say. She wasn't as adamant about them not being there, but we had to give her space, stay out of her space, let her do her own thing, watch TV on her own, be out of sight, but be watching. And so it takes different people to be able to be with people who don't want them there.
Yeah, that's definitely true. She had to have her own space, and but you basically coach the girls on, okay, here's what she likes, doesn't like, and she didn't like seeing someone sitting around watching TV all day long because she didn't watch TV. So she felt like that was, well, what are you doing, wasting time?
And money, and I'm paying somebody to sit and watch TV.
Exactly. But yeah, it got better as time went on. But yeah, she was not appreciative of that. I can't imagine not having the TV on all the time. That's my problem. But she wasn't a reader. My wife said, I don't know what she does all day, but she managed to entertain herself.
She liked to watch the birds.
Yeah, she did that a lot. She fed them and watched them and probably named every one of them.
Karen, the girls.
Early in his life, he was a newspaper editor, and he was very word oriented, and toward the end, when he was still able to sit in his office, he would go in there and sit down, and his desk was just piled with piles of this, that, and the other. And Tony's person would be there. Madeline in particular is the one I'm thinking of. And Harold would just pick things up and move them from pile to pile. And, after a while, and she would just sit there and watch him, or, pick something up if he dropped it, or after a while he'd say, well, that's enough work for today. And they would go in the other room and do whatever they did in there. But it was just that catering to what he thought he could still do. Nobody.
The biggest challenge people have with dementia is they want to try to say, no, you're not at work, or you retired 40 years ago, or no, the jet's not waiting on the runway, or whatever it is. And you got to go into their world. You got to you've got to, whatever they're seeing on the wall or whatever, and that's the challenge that people have. They want to try to tell them what they're thinking is going on is not going on. And that, it didn't work for either one of your people. You had to go in their world. And, you know, Karen, your dad, he was all over the place.
I know. You really educated us on how to handle him. You know, because at first we'd try, you know, like you said, telling him the truth, you know, like, no, this or that isn't happening, but that didn't work. And you taught us how to handle him. And of course, the girls, the caregivers who came knew how to handle him, and they were very good with him. He's very social. He liked to go out. They took him out to lunch, you know, every day, as long as he could. By the end of the day, he thought it was time for them to go home. So he was busy trying to write them checks and send them home. I'll pay you. It's time for you to go home. And, you know, they just would fake their way through it. And, you know, Tony I felt at first really bad about lying to him. But I learned it was, like Tony said, going into his world and just having the conversation with what he was doing. Or, you know, we were driving around one day trying to find a golf course. He wasn't sure he wanted to play. Just, you know, Tony taught me how to go along, and it just made things easier on Daddy. And it was for the better. He educated all of us how to handle him.
The unique thing, is trying not to tell people somebody's gone, you know, when a spouse passes away, and you know, people think it's lying. You have to go in their world. And how many times do you want somebody to re-grieve a process and
that's what happened with my daddy. He could not remember my mother had passed away, and we told him the truth for a couple of weeks, and just what Tony said happened. He would grieve horribly every time. And then, you know, we finally came up with a permanent story that my daughter lives out of state, and we just say, oh, you know, Mother's visiting Oregon. She's in New York helping her redecorate her new house, because that's what Mother loved to do. So he, you know, he was fine then, because he thought Mother was still coming home. So he was okay.
And same with Harold too. I mean, a lot of people want to try to keep bringing people into the present. What day is it? Here, this has happened. And that's a challenge with people with cognitive issues, because they can't connect. They can remember a long time ago playing football at UT, or being in a prison, right, like Harold was, and, you know, all these as a reporter, but they can't bring all that and tie it all together with a timeline. And so it's a challenge in that. You guys, in terms of just being able not to have to be there, you live next door to your mother-in-law, so your wife and sister-in-law were over there a lot, Jake, but
yeah,
being comfortable having people with your loved ones. So how did you make that transition with the caregivers? Were there any challenges there, or that like Francis, you didn't go over there because he associated you as the one who was not letting him be by himself and spending all his money and all that. And you know, Karen, you traveled and did different things that you needed to be doing, but yet you had people there. Were there any challenges for you guys as y'all had to work through that and not being there but yet having people there that you felt comfortable with?
My challenge was getting over my guilt of not being with my daddy. But I was comfortable with your people, or otherwise I would not have left him. But you always had a solution. Like I was worried about, well, who's going to do the grocery shopping if I leave town? And you always had a solution for every problem I threw at you. You always had a resource. And you never steered us wrong, ever. So I would still call him daily, or most every day. And but I was very comfortable with the people who were with him.
Yeah, it was the same thing with the groceries for Harold, because I wasn't sure how we were going to deal with that. And the way it worked out was Tony's people, some of them actually cooked for him, you know, and tried to make things that he liked, and kept up with what he wanted to eat or what he was out of or what, and they would just send me the list every week, and I would order it, and we would drive it over there, and they would come out and get it and put it up and deal with it. And it was easy. I mean, as easy as it could be. We had a problem with mail, that Harold would, while he could still walk and was mobile, he would go out and get the mail. And then I had no access to it. I had no idea of what came, what didn't come, what had to be paid. I mean, I went into it cold. I knew nothing about their finances or the way they operated or anything. So it was an intense couple of months of trying to get a handle on this. And I don't know that I could have done it without Tony, because he had so many suggestions and so many ideas about, well, let's try this. And to be a bad situation, it went as smoothly as it could.
Well, and you guys, the girls, it's easy. We do it a little different. Our model's a little different. We had a team. Was that a lot of times people come in and they say, okay, I want one caregiver all the time. So, it's counterintuitive to think, well, why would I want different people? And y'all all experienced, and our model is to have, based on like a 24/7, which all of y'all were, that's a good number of ladies. And there's a reason we don't just put, one is just the volume of hours, but also we want to have where the girls don't get burnt out, the caregivers, as well as the codependencies develop. But we want the families as well to be able to have some variety and depth for when people call off or have car trouble or different things. And so was that a problem for any of you? Initially it may have been, but was that a problem just using a team of people versus having just a very set as minimal as you can have?
Well, Tony, I mean, not just obviously my father-in-law wasn't a long enough situation to really be a problem there, but Mary, we did have some turnover, but you managed it well. And, when we had any issues or problems, you remember the time you called all three of us into your office to discuss an issue that you had discovered we were clueless about, and both my wife and her sister were scared you were going to fire us. And they were willing to do anything to say, no, it's okay, it's not a problem. But again, you handled that in the best way possible, and again kept the right girls there at the time. Obviously, Mary's situation was different because the daughters took turns and they did all the shopping and everything. So it worked out well. But if you remember, Tony, we had you coming into Scott and White to begin with because they were trying to do it all and it was killing them. And kind of like what Karen said.
I forgot about that. We sit with a lot of people in the hospital because families will try to just stay around the clock, and it is very difficult to do.
It doesn't work. And they had to go through, like Karen mentioned, the guilt of, I can't do it all for mom, and they got over that. And again, you started at Scott and White, and then went through Cornerstone, and then on to the house. But yeah, they weren't going to survive without the help, and it's just that's the only thing that they were able to make it through with.
Chemistry is a big deal, and the other thing, when we started, I hope I did a good job of it. Made very clear there's going to be chemistry issues. People that if there's a chemistry issue or if there's an issue where people just don't click with somebody, then we will try to counsel. Hey, they don't like it when you put the silverware here. They don't like it when you put the glasses here. But sometimes there's not a click. And so you have to transition people out. Did you feel like that was done reasonably for you guys? In that if there were issues sometimes it's just people that don't click. Even sometimes your team doesn't necessarily click.
You totally took care of it. Yeah.
I felt with Harold, y'all catered as much as you could to the people that he preferred to have. And he had definite preferences. And for the most part, those were the people that were there.
Well, and Tony, I mean, you and I have got multiple clients that we work with, and some are way more difficult than others, but the one that's probably been the toughest that you and I worked on, you went over and above multiple times trying to make sure someone was there, because she's more caustic than nearly anybody else we've dealt with.
I think we went through 15 or 16 caregivers in months, and then we kind of settled into a groove. But that's the challenge, is that it takes a thick skin. Some of the ladies wouldn't go back, but she was firing people every day. And
she was brutal.
And in a holding pattern right now. But Karen, if you felt overall, if there were any issues, that they were addressed and handled, right?
And quickly, yes. We're very, very pleased. Couldn't ask for anything more. And caregivers are wonderful. Every now and then I would keep Daddy all day, like on a holiday, to give them a day off. And I was like, after that shift, I was even more grateful for them. It's like they were a lifesaver. Honestly, I hate to admit it, but I could not have done what they did. And
thankfully, you have the ability to be the daughter and not the caregiver, and that was, it's hard to be both. Mm-hmm. Especially when your dad reset every 5 minutes or less, and that is draining, just from a emotional, but also just mental, of having the same conversation 50 times a day.
Just trying to keep one step ahead of him so he won't do this or that, or it's exhausting.
But yet he was smart. He would catch if there was an inning. Ball is what he'd say. Ball. And then how do I come back from that? And Harold is the same way. So if the overall, if somebody were starting your journeys, which they're very unique, and Jake especially, we just overseeing care of people that the bank is in their trust accounts. What do you advise people if they're looking for home care? And apart from, what would you tell people? Here are the 3 most important things to consider when you're looking at bringing caregivers in the house. What would that be?
Well, one, you've got to be able to trust who you're dealing with, and never have had any issue, with that one way or another. Even when, as you well know, sometimes the client will say something, but no, I've got a level of confidence and trust in how you run the business, how you hire people, and the kind of people you do hire. So that's just a burden off of me, because as you know, when I'm just paying the bills, I've got to find a solution, and you're it. So that's just one less thing I have to worry about. And then we set it and go, and you just keep me updated as far as, okay, we're having to shift this around, or we're doing this, or we need to increase this care or change this service. But I don't have to worry about the day to day. You've got it covered. You're monitoring it. And like I said, you bring any problems to me before I even know about them.
So confidence in who you use. Ladies, what would y'all say is something that's really important that people would, if you're talking to somebody who's starting down this path and they're taking care of somebody or having to oversee the care, what do you think are some things that they need? Because you don't know what you don't know when you start this. You don't know what's coming.
No, you don't have any idea. And I would say, if they were actually looking at places or caregivers, I would say try to talk to people who have used that caregiver, that service. I mean, talk to references, talk to people who've done it, because I'm kind of like Jake here. I was out of the loop there because I was not there. And I relied totally on what you said. And I can't imagine that there are that many services out there where you can do that. You know, I've never used a different one. I had you with Harold, and then I had you with my aunt. And it was the same situation both times. I just relied on what you said.
Karen?
Yes, that you. I didn't have any other experience either. We talked to you, and after we had an appointment set with another agency to talk to them too. But after talking to you, I'm like, no, we're going with Tony. I just totally, you know what you're doing. You've been in the business long enough. You are personally involved. Another agency, I mean, there are things that I didn't realize that they didn't do until I, heard some things. So I would piggyback on what Francis said of just talking to someone who has been involved with the agency. You've got to be able to totally trust them. And I know when you came into my parents' house before you actually brought caregivers in, you were able to tell me you need to get this and this and this out of the house. You need to do this and this and this. It's for their protection and our protection. And you just totally stepped us through everything, and just have a huge amount of trust for you and your agency.
When that was like, we all had the hospice visits in terms of, a lot of times that's a bad word. And we talked through that with y'all at certain times. And even, our philosophy is a little different in that the girls, we want to be the ladies, the caregivers. We don't want them making diagnoses. We don't want them consulting. We don't want them, they're not family friends. They are there. We want them to be friendly, but they're not friends. But yet hopefully what we're trying to do overall is be an advocate for your parents or for people's parents or spouses, but also educate them in that. I look back on what I went through with my parents, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I had no clue, and I would do things differently. And so that's kind of what's coming in that if I learn something or through trial and error, we try to incorporate it in. But the ladies make or break everything. They really do. I can say or do whatever, but if I don't have ladies that can be there reliably, compassionately, empathetically, and that they can do what they need to do, the whole thing falls apart. And y'all overall had good experiences there, and that, I mean, that is a big deal.
Yeah, I went beyond and really cared about my dad.
They used to take Harold, when Harold could still go, they would take him out. He liked ice cream. They'd take him to get an ice cream cone. They would take him to get a hamburger. I mean, it was way beyond what they were required to do. And I think,
go ahead, Jake.
Well, I was going to say, and of course, Tony and I probably have too many connections. Tony's taking care of my wife's aunt now, and she's in a different situation due to Alzheimer's. But when my wife and my granddaughter go
as well, y'all all have a connection to Mercy House.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's fine. It's a memory care thing, and that was a very tough decision for y'all in different ways as well. Karen at the end of life, and there were specific reasons that we did that. Jake, your in-law side, that was a big decision. Trying to keep her at home as long as possible, and Francis, your aunt was she would never wanted to be there one single day, but she was there safely for what, a year and a half or long?
About that, yeah. And that was not a tough decision. I mean, that was not a hard decision at all, because she could not exist any longer on her own. And luckily, the decision was made for me, because she had driven to town and then couldn't remember how to get home, and went to the fire station and told them that she was being followed by the moon people and she didn't know how to get home. And so they took her to Scott and White. And from there, she went to Mercy House. And I was thankful, so thankful. She was my first experience at dealing with dementia. And I didn't know what was going on with her.
Directly, like versus Harold's dementia, because
Yeah,
you were not in
Harold was first, but I didn't directly deal with that. So I was beyond words thankful. And like you said about somebody a while ago, every time Tony would call me, I would think, oh my word.
Nobody wants to hear from Tony.
He's
Nobody.
going to tell me he
Tony.
cannot keep her. He cannot deal with her anymore. And
What's
then
the first thing I say when I call and you answer the phone? What do I always say?
Frankie, it's Tony.
Not an emergency. Please call me.
Yes,
or I text
you
Nobody, everybody thinks it's bad news when I call.
But she was tough, and Tony was able to handle her as well as anybody could.
Once again, good ladies that can. Dementia requires thick skin. Dementia requires a different level of energy in terms of redirection and engaging and redirecting and engaging. And so the ladies, she was a challenge to the very end, but she did well, and the ladies did well handling her. So the people definitely don't want to get a call from me. And so we finish up there. Is there anything else that you would tell anybody if they were trying? I mean, just, hey, I'm getting ready to start this with my parents or spouse. Anything else that you guys can think of that just what they need to consider for either in-home care or even going to a facility?
I would tell whoever that they could totally, once again, trust you. I was just thinking about not only of, I mean, you advised us, when Daddy finally had to leave home the last couple of weeks, we knew that it had to happen. But just all along the journey with each of my parents, like you said, it's time you need to get your mother in hospice, and now's the time to get your dad in hospice. Because felt like I was just running around like a chicken with my head in another place. But it was interesting because between the times of hospice for each of them, it was a different hospice that you thought would be better. And I appreciate you are so in tune to what's going on in these worlds of home health and hospice and so forth, because I felt you always recommended the best for my parents and can totally trust what you recommended.
Well, and then too, the benefits of that are available, the programs, the things that could be helpful to these people, not just hospice, but like with my Aunt Ellie, you told me, hey, I think she's eligible for VA benefits. And you knew how to do it, and you knew how to get them for her. I would never have even considered that such a thing was, just the people need to rely on you for information much more so than I think they would get anywhere else.
Well, that's what I hope, like things like this video do, is just hearing y'all stories. Maybe they pick up something, not necessarily whether they need something now, but just things to think about. From, Ellie would have ran out of money had we not, tapped into that benefit. And
I'll tell you what, you were the one who just off the top of your head said, why don't you see if the NFL has anything for your dad? I'm like, oh, okay. And they did. So, I would not have thought of that unless you'd suggested it.
from the CTE program, the head trauma, they basically paid for everything. Right. That's
close.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, Jake, you got any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm the same as Karen. You were the one that, again, plugged us in with the right hospice and took care of that. I also, you recommended some VA on ours too. So, yeah, it's just a world that most people won't live in. And, you don't just provide the ladies, but you go a step beyond in trying to look at other solutions, other options, and other avenues that can help.
Well, whether it's somebody in the hospital and a discharge planner comes in and says, okay, you're going home tomorrow, you're being discharged tomorrow, where are you going? You know,
Right.
What facilities, or they don't, home health, nobody understands home health, or what, you know, how it's supposed to be and how it can be and how it is. And, you know, and so we really try to be advocates and try to coordinate that care. And that sometimes bothers some, and we call them care partners, home health companies and hospice providers and different things, because we want to be partners with them. And we're the boots on the ground. We're seeing all this stuff. And you know, if we can get them into therapy or do different things, we try to figure that out, because ultimately people don't know what they don't know. And they rely on sometimes people who have dogs in the hunt for whatever reason. And so we encourage people to, you know, look at your options. There are obviously some services that do better than others in hospice and home health, and, you know, when you can get durable medical equipment and when a bed is appropriate, and, you know, different things. So, well, I really appreciate y'all taking the time to do this.
One last little thing, Tony. I was talking to Paige a minute ago about how I was going to do this Zoom.
Yeah, y'all are still honeymooning. That's so nice.
Yeah.
How long has it been right now?
We've been married 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, but we've been together like seven or eight. Anyway, I was telling him what we were going to do, and he said, you know, Tony, this isn't just a job for Tony. He said, I truly think this is a calling for Tony. And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I think it is. I think that's a good description.
Paige used to get to hang out at the facility. He was a maintenance guy for me, so he got to meet everybody and see what it's like here. So we do miss him.
And I will say one thing else. You never promised anything that you couldn't and didn't deliver. And I know there are other facilities that will say they do this and this and this and this. And when you talk to people who've really been there, they don't really do that. You don't know what goes on while you're not there. But you always did what you said you were going to do, and didn't.
That's true.
Well, I do very much appreciate your time, and hopefully this time will be a benefit to other people. So, and we appreciate it, and the ladies do too, that you trusted us to take care for your loved ones. So, any last comment before we terminate it? See, this Zoom stuff, I wasn't even Zooming until a week ago. That's pretty crazy.
It's awesome.
And y'all are so high tech. Amazing. Thank you again for your time. We'll see y'all another time.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.